Welcome to our online video series, Reading Hope in Trying Times. Our guest today is Ami McConnell. Ami is a Nashville-based writer and editor, formerly served as editor-in-chief and vice president of Howard Books, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. For over a decade, she acquired fiction for HarperCollins and launched a fiction imprint there. Her editing credits include many New York Times bestsellers, as well as numerous award winners. She's also a prolific ghostwriter. And Ami has co-authored, among other things, the USA Today bestseller, Kind is the New Classy, by Candace Cameron Bure. Is that how you pronounce it?
Bure.
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 Sorry. Amy's also just released her own book, a new book called Faithful Daughter, about the mystifying, crazy-making relationships between mother and daughter. So I'm anxious to hear a little bit more about that. But in any event, welcome, Ami. It's so great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Brian. I'm so glad to be here. It's always good to talk to you.
Well, same here. I always enjoy that tremendously. So before we started the recording, you and I were conversing a little bit about the impact of this whole pandemic and what the different effects are for all different types of folks. So maybe you can share a little bit about what it's been like for you and just some of the reflections on this in general.
Yes, well, I think the biggest impact for me personally has been how it has reframed my own identity almost, in the sense of like, how do I spend my hours and my days? I have been working since I was 23. I'm almost 50, and I love my work as a book midwife, and I spend a lot of hours in that work. I always have as an adult. And because my family of at least 4 of my kids live with me, we have 3 kids who don't live with us, but 4 of the kids live with me, and they are here all the time. And my husband works out of the house as well, so we're all together a lot. And that's been wonderful. They're my favorite people in the world. But it's been really interesting to kind of realize I am not a working person who has a family. I'm a person in a family who works. And that's been probably the biggest change in my life, because we are together so much. So that's been interesting. I mean, it's great, but it's been a whole new thing because they're not going anywhere else. They're here with me all the time.
Sure. No, that had to be a big change. So one of the things we've been focusing on during this, interview series is how God has helped us through challenging times. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, how that's been the case for you at various times in your life.
Well, yes. So certainly, like anyone who's listening to this or interacting, I've had some significant challenges. And I think it's been wonderful for me to spend a little bit of time every day before the children wake up, just reflecting on how faithful God has been in the past. And every day I try to remind myself, he was there yesterday, he's going to be here today, and he'll be here tomorrow. And that's just been a mantra that I've used, not just during this crisis, but going back some time. But it's been a practice that I've been using, especially during this quarantine time, of just reflecting on God's faithfulness and reminding myself he'll be here today and he'll be here tomorrow. And that's been really grounding. It continues to be.
Well, I can see that. And I know that thought has permeated your work. Everything that you've done in terms of, your book midwifing, as you said.
Right. Yes. I love that term because as a mother, I know a lot about how every time you come to an author who is pregnant with an idea, they all need something different. So that's why I use that term, because it's not the same twice, and it's also beautiful, and it's a sacrament and all that. And I also keep a level head in the midst of all that. So that's why I call myself a book midwife. But yeah, so in crisis in the past, I have been able to ground myself in specifically scripture. Like I remember one time I went through a crisis in which I had just finished reading Job, right? So when I was in that moment of crisis, was when my marriage broke up, actually. I was able to kind of look back and go, Job went through all these terrible things, and the same God who was there is with me now. And it was fortifying. So yeah, I think just that reminder of looking back on benchmarks in my own life and staying grounded in that has been super helpful.
So
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sure. No, that's great. Thank you.
Sometimes I go off on tangents.
No. So I'm really anxious to hear more about your new book, because you've contributed to the development of so many other books by other people. And here, now you're coming out with one that, you're the lead on. And so I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, we actually have kind of a joke in my family, because we will go into a bookstore and people will go, oh, there's your name in the acknowledgments. There's your name in the acknowledgments. Why are you never on the cover? And I've always said, I like to stay in the background. I really enjoy that. I'm an Enneagram 2. And so you know what that means. And it means, and for me, it's in practice, it's often been, I much prefer to focus on someone else's feelings and emotions rather than look at my own, right? If you're familiar with the Enneagram, you know that. And so with regard to Faithful Daughter, it came about as a result of a conversation with someone who was a good friend of mine I've known for a long time. And we work together. So can I tell you this inciting event story really quickly?
Oh, of course, please.
Okay. So my friend, shout out to Pamela Clements. Pamela Clements and I were having lunch together, and it was a business lunch. We were talking business, and we were doing that thing that we always do as business people of just talking about what are the hot books right now, which authors are giving us trouble, which proposals we've read that are exciting that we might be going after, that kind of thing. And so it was a stimulating conversation. I love those kinds of lunches. I live for those lunches. And at some point, Pamela said something about how she had been going through her mother's things. And I said, no, why were you going through your mother's things? And she said, well, she's recently passed. And so we started talking about that aspect of her life, which now we've spent maybe an hour talking about business. And she mentioned this about her mother. And she looked at me very seriously and she said, don't take this moment for granted with your own mom, because she'll be gone someday too. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. I just kind of went, what? No, mothers don't go away. And it was just this kind of stark moment. And we began to talk about our relationships as daughters with our mothers and what that meant. Brian, I went away from that conversation feeling all the feelings, if you will, feeling all the feelings that evoked. And one thought that arose was that I was the same age that day as my own mother was when she came and told me that she had terminal cancer. She survived that cancer, I'll have you know. But at that moment when she told me that, I was also pregnant with my first child.
Wow.
So a lot of feelings stirred up in me that I couldn't put back in the bottle, right?
Sure.
Like it was a lot. And it was an identity moment of kind of going, I've always thought of myself as a daughter and now I'm a mother. And what does that mean? And for me, Brian, the best way to kind of deal with a lot of feelings and thoughts is to write and to read in that milieu, right? To delve into that subject matter by writing and reading. So I began to read more about mother-daughter relationships, about parenting. And most of all, I started talking to my writer friends saying, what's your relationship with your mother like? And I have a lot of writer friends. So this conversation with women, Brian, there's something really elemental about the mother-daughter relationship. The stories were incredible and they just kind of blew me up. And I said, I'm doing this thing. I'm putting together a compilation of these stories because they needed to be told. In part, Brian, because I knew we needed to tell them we women, we daughters. But I also knew that there was something very fortifying for me in hearing the spectrum of stories, that there's really no right or wrong mother-daughter relationship to aim for. It's just a beautiful thing. And sometimes it's painful and messy. And I mean, there's stories in here, Brian, of surviving an alcoholic mother, of a woman who spent years as an addict and a prostitute. There are stories of people finding out they were adopted, or people who struggle with infertility in themselves and then find they adopt and they discover Claire's story. Claire Gibson's story is incredible about being an adoptive mother and how that fortified her relationship with her mother. Anyway, there are all these stories that help me see my own relationship as a daughter in a new way. So it was a very hopeful exercise for me to put these stories together. And then sharing them has been so fortifying, because women have come to me and said, I'm so glad to see my own story reflected in the book and to feel hopeful about it again, or to feel validated. It's been really terrific, honestly.
That's very cool.
So,
It sounds like, some tremendous stories that are really going to be helpful for people. It sounds like quite a variety too.
It is. I mean, we did that intentionally. As I worked with my publisher, we would kind of go, you know what, there's not a story from somebody who's, has this kind of relationship with their mother. There's not one that's, say, funny. And so we would go and find one that would from somebody who had more of a sense of humor, and that kind of thing. But there are some that are very poignant and some that are just jubilant. Mine is the one that I have just a couple of pieces in the book, and mine is more of a rise up and call her blessed kind of story. It's about how my mother taught me to pray through her life, not through any sort of overt instruction. But I realized the lessons that she had taught me when I began to parent my own daughter, and was able to kind of say, what did I learn? And I never overtly said, what did I learn from my mother? It was just a sort of a biological, a physiological response almost. And that's oftentimes how we learn from our mothers, is just through their presence and how they are. Sometimes we react against them. There are some stories in there. Oh gosh, Lauren Winter, honey. Lauren Winter's story is really great. And it's really more about unbecoming, in some ways, what we've learned from our mothers, unbecoming like her. But yeah, so it's been really interesting, and I'm excited to hear more stories from women as more and more women get a hold of the book.
Well, it definitely does sound like something that could help people right now too. So I think your timing is, lucky, I guess, but it's good.
I don't know about that. It's nice. So I have heard from people who've said, I bought this and I meant to just read a little bit at a time, and I ended up reading the whole thing, and it was such a comfort. I've heard that word a lot, that it was a comfort to them. Again, I think in this moment, because we are literally confined to our homes, we are being more reflective than we've been in a bit. I don't know about you, but that's been true for me.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
I'm more reflective. I'm even like, if you look at my journal entries from today versus 3 months ago, I'm almost a different person at the level of reflection that's going on right now. And I know that's true in a lot of our lives. When you're in that reflective place, it's a good time to kind of be open to other people's stories, right? Because we like to, I think humanly, we like to reduce other people's stories to just an Instagram post, or a quick Christmas card image of, here's what our life looks like. Now we have a little bit of time to hear people's hearts, and as they're shared in this kind of book, where we look at other people's lives and we go, it's not all rosy. It's tough. But as we're in communion with each other, I think we see that's good. That's okay. That's okay. It's not all rosy, but it is going to be okay because we're in this together.
And again, I think that's one of the reasons why, it'll really resonate right now with people. Because as you said, people are more reflective now. And that's one of the reasons why I think that this series has been so helpful for people, is that they like to hear what other people are thinking, what other people are doing,
Right.
how other
Right.
people are coping, with this. What are the resources that they bring to bear, whether it's internal or external, around this. So
what I love specifically about your constituency, if you will, the people who are listening to this, is they are our people, Brian. They're people who are people of faith. So that's sort of like our, we can kind of just, it's an implicit understanding that we have among the group, is that we are all clear on our imperfect nature, and that we are all in need of God and salvation. So we all understand that. And then everyone, so there's that, we share the faith, and we're all artists, right? So we all are creators, and we all recognize that we are co-creators and that we must create in order to thrive. So your people are all looking to this podcast going, I want to live out my faith, and I also want to create. And this is the best time to create in my lifetime, right? Because what else is there to do? We must create. And as artists, we can create art out of adversity. If we're paying attention, if we're feeling the feelings, and we're honest, we can create something beautiful out of something that is pretty crummy in a lot of ways.
Well, from a writer perspective, I mean, everyone has been using the word unprecedented, right? In terms of what we're going through, but it certainly, I think, has brought about some rich opportunity for writing and reflection on things that wouldn't have otherwise happened, or maybe never have happened within a person's lifetime. And so that's rich material, right? For thought, for reflection, for meaningful writing. So I think you're
Absolutely.
onto something there in terms of this being an important time for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the number one reason I hear from people that they don't create is because they don't have enough time. So that excuse is out the door. Like, if we have fewer obligations now because there are fewer appointments and fewer outside meetings. Now, granted, we have to reconfigure our days. If you're like me and you have kids who are constantly around, so you have to kind of, again, make the space to create, make the space to write. But those people who have been telling me over the years, I have a great fiction book idea, I just don't have the time because I have to work, I have to go, I have so much commuting time, or I have, all these different obligations, these board meetings and things. It's time to write that novel.
So, Amy, I know you read a lot in addition to writing, and what kind of recommendations do you have that you think would be helpful for people right now?
Thank you for giving me that opportunity to shout out. Sometimes I feel like I'm a frontline bookseller. Like, I always want to talk about, like, in a dinner party setting, I'm like, can we get to the part about recommending books? Can we get to all the things that we can? I love recommending books. Lately, I will confess, I've been reading a ton of research for my upcoming project. So those books would be boring to your followers, but they're exciting to me. Is it okay? Can I give 3 shout outs?
No, of course, yes.
Okay, so for the first shout out, I would love to just say I am really in love with Jesus Calling right now. And that it's been sold, so there are so many copies that have been sold that I'm almost embarrassed to give it a shout out because it's so popular.
Sure.
But every morning I read it as a devotional lately, and I just can't believe how pertinent it is. I feel like every day it really speaks to me in a new way. And I was very skeptical at first of the, because I'm kind of high church, and I was kind of skeptical of the way that Sarah Young speaks in Jesus's voice and Jesus's POV to the reader. And I was like, who would presume to do that? but it's so, I read up on her particularly, and I know some people are right now just like turning this off, like, I disagree, and that's okay, but I was skeptical too. But I just feel like she really nails it every day for me. There's something I needed to hear every day. So Jesus Calling, that's in one category. And then personally, I have been at night really wanting to, after I've done reading my research work, I've been wanting to escape. And so I've been reading a lot of suspense lately. And so my husband is laughing at me because we both read in bed. And I keep going, oh, oh, like with all these declaratory, like little, oh, oh my gosh, I'm surprised. Because I've been reading J.T. Ellison's book, and she is so masterful. I've been reading Good Girls Lie. And if you like suspense, please try J.T. Ellison. She is so good. I feel like I can completely relax my editorial muscles when I read her. I edited just fiction for about 15 years, so I'm really hard on fiction authors.
Sure.
I'm one of those who reads like 50 pages of a novel and just goes, forget it, I can't do it. So I highly recommend J.T. Ellison if you like suspense. And then this is a little bit of a shout out to a friend, my friend Loretta Lynn. I helped her write her most recent book. It just came out yesterday. It's called Me and Patsy Kicking Up Dust. And it's about her friendship with Patsy Cline. Loretta Lynn and Patsy Cline were best friends, but they only knew each other for about 18 months.
Wow.
And those 18 months were so needed by both of the women. And so this book really captures that. And I got to help Loretta Lynn with it. And I'm just really, I'm really excited about the reception it's getting. And people are loving it and going, how did we not know this? So that's really fun. It's called Me and Patsy Kicking Up Dust by Loretta Lynn. So I'm going to give that one a little bit of a shout out if I can.
Well, that's very cool. I mean, you've worked with so many amazing authors,
I have,
over your
Brian.
career already. And the fact that you got to do this one sounds like it was really rewarding.
It is really amazing. The people that I've been able to work with, the girls and I, my daughters and I cleaned out the basement yesterday. So we were going through just boxes of photographs, and my girls would go like, who is that? And I would say, oh, that's, Homer Hickam, who, and they were like, you mean like Rocket Boys of Homer Hickam? And that's, just interesting. I've worked with such interesting people, such wonderful people, and it's just been such a joy. But it's honestly, Brian, every book is different. Every birth of a book is different, and everyone has been my honor and my pleasure to come alongside. It's been just, it's really humbling to come alongside someone who is pouring their heart and soul into a book. And I never get tired of that. And it's been really neat to kind of go, oh, that's what this feels like. That's what this feels like is, that's the kind of joy you feel when someone reads it and responds well to it. It's just, there's nothing like it. It's pretty special.
Well, Amy, it's really been wonderful to spend time with you. I'm so glad that we got to talk. And as you and I were mentioning beforehand, during the busyness of our normal lives, even when we see each other in person, which isn't as often as what, we'd like, we're too busy. And here, we get to set aside some time to really, reflect on what's going on and, talk to each other about some important topics. So I'm really glad that you were part of this, and I wish you the best with Faithful Daughter too.
Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it. I'm just thinking back to when we first met on the phone on a Frederick Buechner call, right?
Sure.
And I thought, this guy is so interesting. I hope I get to work with him. Who knew we would have this long friendship? So yeah, I'm grateful for that.
At that point in time, I had no idea that I'd be doing, Writing for Your Life, for example, or, the various things that I'm involved in. So
if we only knew what the future held, we would be just flat on our backs. We would be so flabbergasted because there's just so much goodness to come yet, right? So much goodness to come. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's just wonderful to speak with you, Amy, and share thoughts with you. And again, good luck with Faithful Daughter. And
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to whatever the next project is that you referred to. So, keep in touch. So when, that comes out, we
Absolutely.
can talk about that.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. I can't wait to see you again in person when this is all behind us.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good, Amy.
And thanks for having me. Bye.